Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for the final edition this season of Inside the Zone as we kind of wrap up everything that happened. Obviously, the Komets wish they were still playing.
Sure.
And wish they were in the ECHL's Eastern Conference Finals. But they ran into a pretty good Cincinnati team. Before we dive into some of the offseason questions, just your takeaway from this series against Cincinnati, because in seeing Cincinnati play, no disrespect to the Komets, I think Cincinnati was the better team.
Oh, yeah, they have more talent. And the thing that determined this series was when Cincinnati's best players came to play hard, it was over. Because the Komets, they weren't going to grind through. And that's what they needed to do. I mean, we talked about it as soon as we got back from Cincinnati for the first two games. If they don't hit, they were dead. And they didn't want to hit. They didn't want to grind through it. And that's how you have to do it against teams like that. Your only chance is to grind through, wear them down, and they weren't interested in playing that style.
But it can be a benefit, I think, going forward, because this Cincinnati team, I know time will tell in the next couple of weeks, but you could easily see them winning an ECHL championship.
Oh, yeah.
So seeing a team like that up close, what they look like in the playoffs, going forward, if you're the Komets, is that sort of a blueprint to you?
No.
What do you take away from that?
You can't, because the Komets have to determine yet, are they going to have one affiliation, no affiliation, two affiliations? You can't get to that talent level unless you have two affiliations. And to do that, that means you're going to be constantly restructuring during a regular season. The Cyclones had over 100 transactions during the regular season alone. I mean, and that's normal for a team with two affiliations, you know. And is that what Fort Wayne fans want? I don't think it is.
Well, I'm going to head into the offseason direction now, and that's one of my main questions. NHL affiliation. A couple years ago with the Ducks, we saw how that made the roster a revolving door. But you have to have talent in this league to win. So where do you stand on NHL affiliations? Where do you think the Frankies are going to go from now until the beginning of the next ECHL season?
I don't think they're convinced yet that working as an independent can't work. And I don't know either. I mean, we don't know enough. Just because it didn't work for one season, is that enough to throw it all out? No, not necessarily. I mean, they did pull it together in the second half, and they did become a pretty good playoff team by the end of the year. If they start with that same core group, if they can put it together at the start of the year and don't have to go through rebuilding the roster almost entirely halfway through the season, would that make a difference in the playoffs? Yeah, it could. If you can start with Ben Meisner and Steven Summerhays, your goaltenders, that's a pretty good starting spot if you could.
The Frankies have identified what they say to be about 6 to 9 players, core guys that they want back. Who are those guys, in your opinion, and who do you think has a realistic chance of being in a Komets jersey out of that group next year?
I think there's a difference, though, Glenn. They have said they expect to get 6 to 9 guys back. They haven't said who those 6 to 9 guys are, because I don't think they can. Because we saw this week with Brandon Marino leaving for Europe, it wouldn't shock me if 10 other guys went to Europe. I mean, that's what this is about. This isn't about building a team per se. It's about what guys want to come back, because this is a totally different league. These guys are in it for themselves again and again and again. The number one goal for them is moving up or moving to Europe where they can make more money. It's not about, well, I want to be a Komet. That's not it at all. It's about them. It's about what their agent says is best for them to make the most money when they can. They have a finite career.
Well, so you would say that the ECHL is a much more business-oriented.
It's called the ever-changing hockey league for a reason.
Well, but it's much more business-oriented than we've seen in the IHL and the CHL.
And the players are businessmen. They are businessmen. They are not looking to settle down in Fort Wayne and start a family. They're looking to move, period. If they could have, if somebody had called an hour before Game 6 and said, we got an AHL call-up for you, they'd have gone. That's what they're interested in, and that's what they're focused on. It's that more than, oh, we got a Game 6 to play. No, it's like, I got to take whatever best for my career.
I'm glad that you mentioned Marino, because that's the direction I wanted to go in. Team MVP the last couple of seasons, led the ECHL in scoring with 88 points this past year. Undoubtedly one of the best players for this team in recent history. Where does this hurt the Komets? How much does this hurt the Komets? Him going to Hungary, and where do the Komets go from there in the Brandon Marino situation? He could come back. Sure. I mean, we saw Chalker go play in Italy and come back midway through that season.
Several times. Mm-hmm. Yeah, PC did it.
Vasquez went and came back, although not during the season.
I mean, one of the great things about the Frankies is they don't close the door. They never let a player burn a bridge. How many times over the last 20 years has that paid off for them where guys came back? Guy Dupuis, Guy sued him. Guy filed suit, and he still came back and had a wonderful career here. They never let it become personal. So I think that is a possibility Brandon comes back someday. But in this league, it's constant turnover. It just is. I don't know that there is no perfect magic formula for this league that anyone has figured out yet. Cincinnati's probably come the closest, and they had to do it with 2 affiliations. And they had 8 players back from last year and 3 from the year before that have been here for 2 years. That's pretty constant.
Aside from Marino, I think a lot of people want to know what the future of Kaylee Schrock is. Here's a guy, logged a ton of minutes for the Komets in the last 5 years. Where do you see him going? Because at a certain point, you do have to consider what is after hockey and retirement. And I know because he has been somewhat of a face of the franchise, he's going to have some opportunities here in Fort Wayne. And being a Fort Wayne guy, that's also true as well.
Oh, I think any company would love to have him. Kaylee plays the rough role on the ice, but Kaylee's really smart. He wants to write a book, and he wants to do some major things in his life that are not just, he was the goon. That's not it. He's a very intelligent person, a very well-educated person, and he wants to challenge himself. I think he's going to get plenty of job offers, job opportunities. And I think it's going to get to the point where he's going to be like Brandon is like, this offer's too good. I can't turn it down. I think that's what's going to happen for Kaylee. And if it happens, God bless him, because considering everything he sacrificed with his body, he could walk away from the game healthy. And that is not something you just blow off either. A lot of guys look at Chalker. He didn't get to do that. Look at PC. He struggled to do that. Mm-hmm. Look at Nick Boucher. Mm-hmm. All those guys are still dealing with things. Huckalo, my goodness, yes. Are still dealing with things that they acquired while playing hockey.
So if you had to put money on it,
I don't know. I've talked to him about it, but it's like, I don't think he's made up his mind yet. And it's like, it's foolish for me to say what he's going to do. That's not, that's just arrogant of me, and I'm not going to do that.
Well, Danny Pepin Simone Danny Pepin has a decision to make. It kind of reminds me of Matt Sierczynski, where you have a great opportunity outside to go home to a certain degree. Where do you see him going? Because I think we saw him become even more valuable in the postseason.
Well, and you got to look at it too as there are more to these decisions than just the player. There's his girlfriend, Simone's girlfriend, and she's followed him around for a while. They'd like to get married and start a family, probably. You can't do that bopping around the country all over the place. Mm-hmm. All that stuff comes into a factor that has to be decided. And it is a dual decision. It's not just the player's decision in these situations.
Well, we were talking off camera about guys that are, I don't say primed, but have indicated perhaps that they will be going over to play in Europe.
I thought it was interesting the other night at the fan party. I asked every player what they were thinking about for next year, and all of them said, well, I wouldn't mind coming back, but I really want to look at Europe first. And there's a reason for that. You can make 3 or 4 times as much money in Europe as you can playing in the ECHL. And they know they have finite careers. And another one is the agent can make 10 times as much money for placing a guy in Europe for what he can in the ECHL. So the agents are really pushing him to go to Europe too.
So who are some of the guys besides Brandon that you think have an opportunity, will get an opportunity, are really putting a real distinct eye on playing in Europe?
I think they're all looking at it. I do. I really think they are. They'd be crazy not to. Let's say a player who makes, 1,000 a week here. That's 26 weeks. You can triple that in Europe without even trying. That's a minimum 75. You'd be crazy not to consider it.
Yeah.
I think, Dean Ouellette said that he really wants to look at Europe, but he wouldn't mind coming back here in a few years. Scott Fleming, he wants to look at Europe. I think they all want to look at Europe. I think they'd be crazy not to. That's just the way the business works.
Sean Sadlowski's in an interesting situation because, as Gary Graham has stated, he kind of didn't figure out what his role was until the playoffs. Played very well in the playoffs.
And he played very well the last 2 months.
Yeah. So what's his situation? Because his contract with the Sabres is up. So he's in a different situation than a lot of these guys are as far as his future goes. What can we expect to see from Sean? Because he obviously has a decision to be made.
Yeah, he's a restricted free agent with Buffalo. Now is Buffalo going to want to re-sign a guy who had 11 goals during the regular season? that's hard for Buffalo to gamble on, okay? So maybe they'll cut him loose, and then maybe he considers an offer from Fort Wayne. And the other thing is, too, is unless these guys are protected on the Komets protected list, they can negotiate anywhere. And there will be other offers, so it's going to be a bidding war. It's really difficult. You've got to balance all these things.